Hey, what's up guys? So in the recently released Don't Breathe 2, which takes place after the first one, a blind veteran tries protecting an orphan from a bunch of criminals that are breaking into his house. I recently saw it and the movie is completely nuts. Not necessarily in a bad way, I guess that's up to interpretation. Let's start simple with the characters. One of the protagonists is Norman, the blind man. Now in case you don't know, in the first movie he's the villain who kept a woman in his basement and at one point used a turkey baster to... and he's the good guy in this movie. It's definitely a risky choice, especially in 2021, because throughout the movie they try to be like, no, he's a good sex offender. And you're sitting in the audience like, what the hell? A good one? It's like if you'd see a documentary where they try telling you that Harvey Weinstein was the hero. That's not going to happen. Now there have of course been plenty of movies with really complicated and flawed people where in the first act you kind of notice, wait, I'm rooting for the asshole in this story. However, it's incredibly difficult to write those characters. I think one of the problems is that in the first movie, the hero was a woman who robbed people for a living. So in order to make that criminal likable, they needed to make the person she's stealing from infinitely worse than her, and they did. They try to do the same thing here, but I thought it's just a little bit too difficult to root for him. Anyway, Norman steals this child and just decides, she's mine now. What a hero. But one day there are these guys who break into his house and try to take her from him. Now the bad guys in this movie, it's a little bit strange because at one point it seems like they're saving this girl. The movie flips it a little bit and says they're the bad guys, but they're actually the good guys. But they're actually the bad guys. And the group of intruders, oh man, they're dicks. They're trying to steal the orphan for an extraordinarily evil purpose. We'll get into that in a minute. And this is where the movie unfortunately shoots itself in the foot a little bit because there's no one to really root for. Do you want the child abducting maniac to win, or do you want the murdering meth dealer to win? Those are your options. At one point they make Norman look like the hero because he didn't kill a dog. I mean, if that's all it takes to be a hero, I guess 99% of the people in the United States are heroes. I can't help but think that this movie could have worked much better if the intruders would have been the people that are saving the girl. Then the setup would have been closer to the first one, and they could keep the same villain. Instead, the story is so much more complicated than it needs to be because it wants you to support one of these two horrible teams. It's like when you're in school and you're in a fight with another kid, the principal comes and says, hey, stop, you're both being idiots. He doesn't start taking bets on who's going to win, although that would make school a lot more fun. Anyway, the little girl herself, Tara, she's the one you want to see succeed. But she's not quite a main character because the movie is more about the grown-ups beating each other up in very extreme ways, and she can't be a part of that. So Tara ends up being more of a side character. Now don't get me wrong, there are absolutely parts of this movie that are enjoyable. When the blind man fights all the villains, that is pretty entertaining and fun. However, the entire story could have been 25 minutes long, because there were so many opportunities for the intruders to win. First of all, there is no real reason why the group of thugs doesn't kill Norman right away. In the first film, one of the thieves could have shot him, but he didn't because they just came for the money and he's never done it before, so he's very nervous. But these guys wouldn't care at all. They killed another person earlier who didn't do anything either. And there were a few of these moments where a person is in trouble and there were very obvious alternative solutions. That doesn't make a movie bad at all, but in case you can't tell, I like thinking about these things. For example, there's this one part where Norman attacks one of the intruders, and instead of killing him, he glues his mouth and nose shut and then just walks out of the room. Then the bad guy removes the glue when he's alone. Norman might as well kill him, then he'd have one fewer person to fight later on. There's also a scene where Tara is stuck in a box that's being filled with water, and there's a cable that will electrocute her if the water level gets too high. But the hose pumping the water inside loosely sits in an opening, so she could easily remove it. And there's one small aspect here that when you compare it to the original doesn't make that much sense, because it almost seems like Norman is getting weaker and stronger all at the same time. Now I get that the sequel has to change certain things, especially when they make the person who used to be the villain the hero. But there are 7 people attacking him all at once with machine guns and none of them hit him, yet he takes way more damage in the one-on-one fights. The first movie made this more understandable because the people who went up against him didn't have any guns and they weren't fighters, so Norman could beat them up relatively easily. But for some reason, 7 armed people, some of which used to be soldiers, none of them can land a critical shot, even though there are numerous times where he's right in front of them. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is that the first half of the video will be spoiler free because the movie is still in cinemas and I want you to have a chance to watch it. But now we're going to go into the spoiler territory and talk about the more fun stuff. Now, the reason the people try to abduct the girl is because the boss, Raylan, is actually her real father. This is where it feels like the intruders are doing the right thing. However, they just want to use Tara because her mother needs a heart transplant, so they essentially want her as an organ donor. And while this was not as weird as the turkey baster scene, when it was revealed, it was definitely enough to leave me absolutely stunned, which in a horror movie is a good thing. So while breaking into Norman's house, they do manage to take the girl, and the old man is lying on the ground as he's surrounded by the bad guys. And here there is a mildly confusing moment. The thugs could just kill him, but the leader of the group says no, we're not gonna kill him in front of my daughter because she shouldn't see such disturbing imagery. Right, he will kill Tara and steal her organs, but he won't let her watch a man die, because, you know, that would go a little too far. I mean, that's what every good dad should do. Not the kill your kid part, you know what I mean. Now in hindsight, I recognize that they may have done this to make the daughter trust Raylan so that she sees him as a better person, but initially it does come off as overly convenient. So while Norman is in the house, they try to burn it down. And they do the typical bad guy thing where they look at the house and say, oh yeah, he's dead, we can go now. But then Norman escapes the burning house alive and tries coming after them for the girl. And as he's preparing to infiltrate Raylan's house, it still feels a little bit weird. It's like Norman is thinking, hey, I kidnapped that child fair and square, she's my property now. How dare you take back what I rightfully stole? After that, we go back and forth between Norman and the bad guys. It's revealed that the mother needs a heart since she is the chef meth cook in this house, and that's where all the money comes from. So she's the only one that can cook meth? No offense, but she can barely move her arms or legs. How does this woman do anything? Can't she just write down the recipe? My grandma writes down her recipes for us all the time. That is for food, of course, not drugs. Moving on. They manipulate Tara into giving up her heart since the mother needs one from a direct relative. Raylan then spikes her, juiced with some blue shit, and she passes out. Once she slowly comes to, she's on a surgery table still inside the house, and the DIY surgeon that's doing this backdoor operation, he has this line, it's not a bad line, I just thought it was funny. He says to the father something along the lines of, this surgery carries a lot of risks and it might not end well. Really? Removing someone's heart in a stinky basement where you usually cook meth? I thought everyone did that. Plus, at least one of them is not going to have a heart. I'd consider that very high risk. But there's one part that is quite questionable. The young girl's heart is a lot smaller than the one from the mother. Now yes, I've read that children can donate organs to adults, but I'm sure that it's a whole process, not just like, yeah, that could fit. You can't just cut someone open and plunder whatever you want. It's a person, not a used car at a junkyard, and the daughter just lies there. The surgeon says out loud that they will cut her open while she's awake. Meanwhile, she's on the table like, so, am I going to be cut open here? Really quick, earlier on, they show her as this tough survivalist, so it doesn't really fit with that. Then Norman breaks into the house and turns off the electricity, and without it, the surgery can't take place. While he's in the basement, one of the henchmen has another opportunity to kill him relatively easily. They get into a fight and Norman falls to the floor and the bad guy stands over him. But then the man starts holding a small speech about why he's going to kill him instead of just doing it. And of course, before he does it, the blind man doinks him in the head. While this is happening, all the others are in the surgery room and decide to take this party somewhere else, since they can't do the procedure without electricity. But can't they just wait another 5 minutes until Norman makes his way to this room and then shoot him? Instead, Raylan wants all of the guys with guns to go off as a separate group to find Norman, while he and his wife try escaping the building with their daughter alone. Is this guy high on meth right now? But the ending of this movie was actually really cool, and I felt like it did the only right thing. It would take a little too long to explain, but basically the daughter kills her crazy mother by chopping off her hand and throwing her off a ledge where she falls to her death. Then Norman scratches out Raylan's eyes. After all of that, Norman tells the girl the truth about what he did in his past, how he killed some people and used a turkey baster in a way that is probably not recommended in the instruction manual. But it turns out that as he's explaining all of this, Tara already walked out the building and Norman is just talking to himself. No, I'm just kidding. That would have been pretty funny though. Norman confesses to all his sins and then the father kills him. Then the daughter kills Raylan. I approve. Finally, she walks out alive and lives happily ever after. Anyway, that was a look at Don't Breathe 2. There was a lot more breathing in this one than the first one, but when the fighting started to happen, it was still pretty fun. Let me know if you've seen it and what you thought about it. As always, I hope you liked it and that I get to see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.